Okay, welcome back to the second part of this overview of the Champions Everywhere training plans. So it's René Borg again speaking. And in the first part of this series, we looked at kind of the frame around your training plan. So the information about the period and the training phase, and the information about the weekly training days and the dates, and the overall goals of the training weeks. And we also talked a bit about the last line of each week, which kind of summarizes, well, what would an ideal target week look like? And we could see, we finished there by talking about the fact that you can see the expected pace, the expected time, the expected mileage, heart rate, and the training load. But really, those targets will move depending on how you use the other fields. So I'll go into that a little bit more today as we walk through the basic fields and you get an understanding for, okay, what do I use this for? When should I use one field? When should I use another? Can I use all these fields at the same time? And so on and so forth. So before I'll return to those down here towards the end, because I think they're going to make a lot more sense then. How they're calculated, why you won't always hit exactly what's down here, but why it's still useful to kind of have an idea. So instead what I'll do is we'll go over here to priority, which is the first column that we haven't explained in the first part of this video. So if you haven't watched the first part of this video, by the way, I recommend just go back in our channel and watch that one first. I think the whole thing will make a lot more sense. But if you have watched it, or if you just want to jump straight in to kind of an explanation of what does the activity column mean, what does the suggested route type mean, what does expected pace, duration, and distance mean, then stay with this video, because this is where I'm going to give those answers. So priority basically means, well, of the workouts that you have been prescribed for this particular week, which one is the most important and how do they all relate to each other? So as I mentioned in the first video, this person has opted to train 7 days per week, and we thought that was prudent in this case because they had a history of doing that before. So we didn't see any risks with that. So that means the priorities are from 1 to 7. Now, if you were training only 3 days a week, which is the minimum that we work with, then your priorities would be 1, 2, and 3. So 3, of course, is the least important in that case. But if you're doing 7, as in this example, then workout 7 is the least important. And you can see workout 7 is the recovery run. Here, in this case, it's on the Friday. It's kind of obvious in this case because if you don't do this workout, you'll be basically doing nothing. So you're resting. So that means that workout is not particularly important. So if you have to drop one, it should be this one. That doesn't mean it's not important at all, because active recovery generally tends to be better than passive recovery. Number 6, you can see, is the easy run in this case. So if you've already dropped 7 and you need to drop another day that week, well, that would be your first obvious choice. And then as we work our way up, we eventually arrive at the most important run, which in this case is the priority 1, of course, and that's the long run. And the long run is very, very often the most important run of the week, because it gives you the volume of easy running that balances out, I should say, the harder and the steady running in any workouts that are planned. So when you take away the long run, you very easily imbalance the week. So you end up having a high percentage of steady and hard running versus easy running, and that almost always is a recipe for disaster. So that's why generally the long run is the most important, but of course if you have your peak race in the week, then you'll see that that's the most important, and there are a few other exceptions to the rule that the long run is the most important. When I said that the proportion of easy to steady running can get out of hand, that's what we referred to in video 1. You can see down here that, for instance, this week is expected to be 74% easy and 26% really moderate to hard, not just hard. You can see another way to present that here, planned moderate to hard running. So in this case, it's an hour 37 for this person is expected to be moderate to hard out of the 6 hours and 15 minutes roughly that we're expecting. Now you can see my screen went a little bit funny there, and that's because I have a color tool. So my screen goes on kind of a nighttime spectrum at night, and we've just, sundown just happened outside, and that's just basically to protect my circadian rhythms so they don't get bombarded by daylight when they shouldn't be. But for the case of this presentation, let me just remove that, so you'll see now the screen color is gonna change. There's nothing wrong with your eyes. It was just that when I started recording this video, I didn't plan on sunset happening exactly at that time. So now we should be back to the normal color scheme, which just makes things a little bit easier to see. So we were talking about the priorities and how to use them. So basically that's just the way you organize your workouts. If you know coming into a week, look, I'm only going to be able to run 5 out of the 7 days prescribed, then try and pick 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and then you drop 6 and 7. Unless that's impossible because the day you need to drop is Wednesday, something happened. Okay, in that case you have to take that one out, even if it was actually more important. Then the second column is activity, so that's kind of an obvious one. It shows the name of the type of run that you will be doing. So long run, for instance, here in the first line, and then there's always kind of an information line underneath it that tells you what type of warm-up should you do for that workout. So you can see for long run there's no dedicated warm-up, you just ease into the run. So when there's no dedicated warm-up, that's always kind of the best practice, that gear up slowly, let your heart rate go through the gears, don't ramp straight up to the target pace. So you ease into it over however many minutes is necessary, but generally 10 to 15 minutes of easing in is advisable. That's often the way we prescribe it for all the kind of, you could say, easy steady state runs where you're running at a continuous pace. So long runs, you can say easy runs is the case. Whereas for some of the more workout like activities here, like the out and back, which is a particular type of steady workout that we do, and circuit run, which is another type of steady state workout, you can see that it says 5 minutes as warm up, 5 minutes as cool down. So what that means is that when you go over, so I'm just going to jump a bit ahead here, if you jump over to the duration column here, you can see we're expecting you to run 47 minutes that day. So out of those 47 minutes, 5 minutes is warm up and 5 minutes is cool down. So it's not extra, right? So that means if you take those 10 minutes away, that means there's 37 minutes that you'll actually be doing the session that we call a circuit run. And similarly with the out and back, because you're doing 10 minutes as warm up and cool down, you're actually only doing an out and back for 60 minutes because there's 70 here minus the 10. And the way, for workouts, there's always details out here. So you can see a field here called workout details. So in the case of the out and back, you can see I'm saying, well, you run out for about 30.5 minutes, and we expect that you'll be coming back in around, 21.9 minutes, but basically just under 30 minutes. It won't always work out exactly like that, and that's something you'll understand when you actually look at the workout in detail, which is something you should do for all of these. So if you click out and back, what will happen is you are going to see your browser window load. So you see that here. And you can see you get to a page called Workouts for Running Training Session Types, which is what it is. And if I just scroll down here, you can see a long list of workouts that you can click. So if I look for out and back, there it is. You can click out and back and just wait for the page to load. And here is a long, colorful description, that gives you all the instructions on how to carry out the run. So you can see here, high-end aerobic run, choose an out and back course of similar difficulty, blah, blah, blah. There's important points to look at. There is the rate of perceived effort, but you have that as well in the training plan. So you don't really need that here. And we'll talk about rate of perceived effort in a bit. There's a kind of a note if you are more of an experienced competitor and elites, because they often they can execute certain workouts a little bit differently, so that's mentioned here. We talk about what's the adaptation. That's just kind of the why behind the workout. So okay, well, what's this for? What's the purpose of it? What's the skill involved? What skills would you expect to learn from doing this? So you can see in the case of an out and back, you'll learn something about pacing, about rhythm, and you'll know something about your recovery pace. Biggest mistakes is a really good one to read, but especially before you do a workout the first time, because you will, and the second time when you've done it once, you can look back and say, wow, yeah, I did start out too fast and I had to slow down a lot in the second half. It talks about the terrains that are optimal, you could say, for the workout. And it gives you variations, but generally you won't be using these variations unless your coach instructs you to do that. But if you were to go at your own, or if you use this article without using our training plans, that would give you some ideas of different ways to do basically the same thing, because there's always more than one way to skin a cat. You can see a lot of these workouts types where they were adopted from descriptions designed by Lorraine Moller and Nobuhashi Sumer from our friends, the Lydiard Foundation, who have more of an online tool that you can subscribe to, which is called Running Wizards. That might be something to check out if you're looking for something of that sort. Instead of this, which is a different way of designing plans. So okay, so with that little aside done and dusted, let's just move our screen back in focus here, so you can see as much as possible. So that was, what does the activity mean, what do the details mean, and how does it tie in with the workout details column out here on the right hand side. There's also best time of day for performance in this run. That's not that important a field, to be honest with you, but it's something we just add as a little bit of extra flavor and information. And what we are doing here is, if you provide us information about when do you normally perform your runs, let's say it's 8 a.m. in the morning, that's normally when you get out. We can calculate when should you be doing the next workout based on two things. One is, how long does it take, do we expect it to take to recover from the long run if you're doing it properly? And what's the best time of day to do the next workout? So you will see most workouts that are steady and easy, aerobic kind of workouts, endurance type workouts, are best done in the morning, whereas you'll see quality workouts are best done later in the day. So that's kind of factored in here. But you don't have to follow that, if you can't under any circumstances fit it into your schedule. It's just kind of giving you an idea that you can use when it's possible and you can ignore it when it's not possible. But you can see, for instance, for the long run, it's saying afternoon to early evening, and you expect it to be recovered from yesterday around today at 8 a.m. So that gives you a good idea. If you have one of the fancy new Garmin watches, it will tell you as well, based on the information it collected on you, what it thinks is your recovery days. And that's obviously more accurate than this algorithm, because it can't actually read the heart rate that you did. So if you have a Garmin watch, use that instead. And if not, obviously use this and use some common sense and feel for your own body. Suggested route type is just what's the optimal type of terrain for this, and that's kind of to avoid that you go out and let's say you do all of your routes on really, really hilly, tough terrain, and then it's a much harder week than we had actually expected it to be. Because one thing you'll see when we talk about paces, the paces are as they would be on flat and fast terrain. So that's what they would expected to be for someone like you. So if you go out and you do a long run on an extremely hilly route, then the expected pace will not be anywhere near what we are expecting, basically. So if you see afterwards in your recordings, wow, my pace was so much slower, it's not because the plan is wrong or the estimate is wrong or you did anything wrong. It's just because you picked a course that was much, much tougher than expected. And on that note, of course, the three key fields is the expected pace, the duration, and the distance. So you can see here the expected pace is based on the race results that you have done in recent times, and we tend to use performance in longer races for the steady and easy workouts, and we use your performance in faster races like 1500 meter races, 5k races for the workouts. There's also a range for everything. You can see if you're tired or fresh, you might be slower or you might be faster, and there will be days where you will be even slower or even faster than what's expected. It's just to give you an idea. For a runner of your current abilities, based on your races, what should you be running? But for most of the time, you won't actually be chasing this blindly, because that's the biggest mistake you can make with any training plan. It is to say, well, oh, I should be running 4:53 minutes per kilometer for my long run on average. And then you go out and you push and you do that no matter how your heart rate is and anything else, how you feel. And you'll see that as we go further to the right here in our columns, that's not the intention at all, right? The intention is to use this as something to look back on afterwards to say, well, how do you compare to where you should be? And what does that tell us about your current fitness? If you hit it, great, we can tick in the box that things are going really well, but it's not something to chase early on. And that's why we have a field here called most important. So that tells you at this type of training, in this training phase, this training